Hi, Mike Kennedy with you here. Uh, Trump made the statement about the airplane crash, kind of a big assumption that this crash was in part due to DEI hiring policies. And so what is that? Diversity, my parents going to get into it here, my daughter's parent. Diversion, equity, and inclusion. So what happens is you need a level of people at this level. Okay, so if all white males come in and they're at this level, or cats, you know. Uh, so anyway, you know, they might be at this level, they need to be at this level, but the thing is, someone else comes in and they're at the level that's needed, but they have some identity other than white male, and they would tend to be picked instead of the more qualified people to get this idea of diversity. In other words, you want to have, you know, it's like the quota system. You can only have this many blacks or whites or this, but you know, when you try to fill all those slots in, sexual preference, all those things. And so the assumption he made was that there were probably some less qualified people there. Well, what we find out in the, you know, they're questioning this guy, news people, and they keep trying to get him to answer the question, but he's like, oh no, this is ongoing investigation. We can't talk about this particular case. But what they admitted is there's a critical shortage of air traffic controllers. And in this particular situation, the newsman said there were 2 people doing the work of 4 people. So that means you've got 4, you know, 2 sets of eyes that are gone. And you're just counting on these other people to take up the slack. And, you know, so I decided to do a little research into it. They were saying the average starting pay of an air traffic controller is $60,000. And, you know, to me, that doesn't sound like a lot when, you know, they would say, well, I said, well, what would a janitor get paid in the airport? Well, he get paid $30,000. So it's like, it's double minimum wage, but, you know, there's this big training period in it. You get all the stress and responsibility. To me, that doesn't sound like it's paying enough if it's only double minimum wage. So, you know, that isn't probably drawing people in that pay. But then there's something they call the ATSAT, so it's air traffic, you know, the AT, and so it's this test that measures their qualifications, all right? You know, after the training and everything, they get the score. So it's say one person has a score of 85. That means they can go into, and I'm making some of these numbers up because I don't know them all, but this is the idea. They can only go into a facility that's rated at L9. And what causes that rating? The number of planes, maybe the weather they have there, and the way the airport is and everything. But there's a certain level. So that person's supposed to be in that level airport. Well, you know, at least the research I found said that's often not the case. What will happen is, you know, the person is qualified to be in this airport, but they don't have enough staff in this airport. That person moves up. So they're promoting people or assigning people to jobs that are beyond what they rate their capability to do. Now, I'm not saying that capability wouldn't change in so many years, but at the time they're doing it, they basically have a rating that says they are not qualified. So what causes that to happen? Is it just the shortages? Is it maybe there's some more choice assignments? You know what actually, you know, we're not in the organization, so we can't see how they're actually, you know, assigning people and what promoting people. You know, would you find out that people from Asia get moved up higher with the same level of skill? I just made that up. But, that's the sort of thing we don't know. But, it seems from what I've read, we do know that they have different ratings. And because of the lack of staff, they're putting people, air controller people, in airports that is above their ability to do. And so, gee, that doesn't sound good at all. And so it's like, okay, let's just think about a doctor. You're going into the hospital, you need your heart operated on. They don't have enough heart surgeons. So they send in this guy that does gallbladders. And it's like, the surgery doesn't go that well for you. And then you check afterwards and you find out, well, he wasn't qualified to do that. He was, was excellently qualified to do this other group of surgeries, but not the specific surgery you had. And so this is the same thing with the air controller situation. Now, the one other thing I found out was, and this was on Truth Social, that supposedly Trump found this out, there was 200-foot ceiling. So that means that helicopter, military helicopter, was supposed to be under 200 feet all the time. Well, it was above it. So that put them above in airspace that is being used by the planes. So, of course, the air controller should have caught this, should have directed the traffic. Now, I realize things can happen really quickly, but it basically boils down to you have an aircraft, a helicopter in a place where it's not supposed to be, and evidently you didn't have anyone on the ground that noticed it. They could have warned the plane or said to the helicopter, you have to drop in altitude quick. And then I looked at the safety record, and it isn't that good. They were saying like there've been 1,000 there's a bunch of near misses where almost there was a disaster, and they turned out to be. But the point was, these people got way too close in the air, and it wasn't even supposed to happen. So the fact that we have this collision seems to me inevitable, because we've been fostering the situation where we're putting people in above their ability to manage, higher traffic, whatever, more difficult situations, and then we're not putting enough people there. So you could be having an underqualified person, even in places with completely staffed, but then you're cutting half the staff out of there, and so this person's like overwhelmed twice. Well, that's a situation for disaster. And I just looked on this one site, and this one guy, and he said he was an air controller traffic guy for like 20 years, or 20 or 30 years, and he said he thought the problem was the management. When the government always asks them how they're doing, the officials that control the air traffic and everything say, oh, we're doing great, we're doing an excellent job, everything's perfect. And it's like, well, evidently it hasn't been perfect for a long time. This understaffed situation has continued quite a while, and this idea of assigning people to airports that they're not qualified to work in has been happening quite regularly. Now, here's my little solution. Just a first thought thing was, why don't we get some military people in there? I mean, they're talking about, this is a highly stressed job too. So they're overworking people. They're making them work 6 days with a bunch of overtime. So it's like, well, in a high-stress job, that's going to get you. And sooner or later, you're going to start making mistakes. You're going to be at work. You're going to be tired. You're going to be stressed, and you're going to miss something. And so, what about maybe filling the positions temporarily with military personnel? In other words, they'd go in, they'd get trained, and they would be working right alongside the civilians, and they'd be basically in that job for maybe the length of their term in the military, and hopefully they would be able to get civilian replacements. But then too, someone might go into it just thinking, oh great, this is great, I'm in here, the job in the military, I'm proving I can do it. When I get out, I can walk back in this job and I can get, military people aren't paid a lot because they're in the military, uh, and, get this much money. Go in as a completely trained, qualified person saying, oh, yeah, I worked at JFK Airport, for 4 years. And, this is my record, here's what my supervisor said and everything. So they're going right to you saying, I've already done this job one exactly like it, and I can do it. I would think those people would get paid pretty good. So anyway, we'll have to see as they talk more about this. But the two factors, well, say three factors so far that I've learned about this crash is that underqualified people are in positions where they need people with greater qualifications. They don't have the staffing to fill the necessary positions. In other words, this crash was in an area where they needed 4 air controllers. They only had 2. And the second one is that the helicopter was above the height it should be in. So in other words, you can think of it like roads in a way. And, they went from where the helicopter should be to where their planes were going to be. So, that's a recipe for disaster. Of course, we won't know till they do some extensive, analysis and things, whether did that helicopter just go up there for a few moments or go down? Was it steadily above where it should have been? I mean, what I'm saying is, was this helicopter, breaking the rules for a significant amount of time, which would mean more so that the air controllers just didn't see what was happening, didn't think of it, weren't concerned about it, probably because they're overstressed and they're looking at all the other things, and somehow they missed this helicopter. Obviously, if it just had been an immediate thing where I don't know how a helicopter could, with a defect, could all of a sudden shoot up straight, but maybe they can. Was there something wrong and the helicopter just, went up and crashed into a plane? I mean, I suppose that's possible. They have the black boxes now. It's a recovery mission, of course. That was they waited quite a bit longer than they needed to say that. The water, is really cold. It wasn't really deep water, but it was very cold. And now they're still recovering bodies. They looked on shore trying to find people or whatever, but it appears everyone died, including the military people and maybe 60 passengers. And, of course, there's always someone, that they'll use as an example. There were some skaters there. So there were some other athletes and their coaches, their parents and things. And so they all died in it as well. But that's the scoop. And if we get a little more information on it, I'll share it if it's significant. Bye.